Echoes of Gravitational Imprints.
1. Expanded. Dr. Ellis Vance wasn't like other physicists. While her peers at the Cairo Institute meticulously charted the predictable movements of distant galaxies or theorized about quantum foam, Ellis spent her nights hunched over archaic blueprints of ancient megalithic sites, particularly the Great Pyramids of Giza. For years, sensors around these colossal structures had registered anomalous gravitational fluctuations, subtle ripples in the very fabric of spacetime that defied conventional explanation. Most attributed them to minor geological shifts, localized seismic activity, or even faulty equipment. But Ellis, with a spark of stubborn genius and an almost obsessive dedication, refused to accept such mundane explanations. It's like listening to the ocean and only hearing the waves, not the whale song beneath, she'd often mused to her empty lab, a chaotic symphony of monitors glowing with complex algorithms and discarded coffee cups. She believed the pyramids were more than just tombs or monuments. They were instruments, colossal tuning forks humming to a frequency no human ear was designed to detect. Her colleagues, steeped in conventional astrophysics and archaeology, often dismissed her theories with a polite, if condescending, smile. Gravitational anomalies are just that, anomalies, Ellis, Professor Alistair Finch, her former mentor, had once said. The universe is noisy. But Ellis knew better. There was a rhythm to this noise, a pattern hidden within the chaos. Her journey to this unconventional path began early. As a child, she'd been captivated by the silent grandeur of ancient structures, not for their historical significance, but for the sheer impossibility of their construction. How could such immense stones be moved, lifted, and placed with such precision? Traditional explanations always felt incomplete. Later, during her doctoral studies, a chance encounter with fringe theories on zero-point energy and space-time manipulation ignited a spark. She began seeing the universe not just as a collection of objects, but as a vast, malleable tapestry of energy and forces. This led her to gravitation, the most pervasive yet least understood of the fundamental forces. She theorized that if anything could leave an indelible mark on the universe without physical interaction, it would be gravity itself. Her breakthrough came not from grand theory alone, but from meticulous, painstaking data analysis combined with cutting-edge technology. She had spent months recalibrating and integrating fragmented sensor readings from decades past, with data streaming from her own array of hypersensitive gravimeters strategically placed around the Giza Plateau. She ignored the obvious spikes and troughs, the daily tidal forces, the distant tremors. Instead, she focused on the minute, almost imperceptible background hum, the sub-hertz oscillations that defied any known earthly source. What she found was initially subtle, almost like catching a whisper in a hurricane. It was a faint, recurring pattern in the gravitational field data that, when isolated from the ambient noise, revealed an astonishing regularity. It wasn't random, chaotic, static. Instead, when she fed this purified raw gravitational flux data into her bespoke 4D mapping software, a program she had coded herself, designed to visualize distortions across 3 spatial dimensions and the dimension of time, a startling image began to coalesce. Within the intricate web of space-time around the pyramids, specific, subtle distortions began to emerge. They weren't physical marks etched into the millennia-old stone, nor were they seismic ripples emanating from the Earth's crust. Rather, they were inherent to the very space around and within the structures themselves. Like a stone dropped into a perfectly still pond, these distortions created ripples, but ripples of gravity, not water. And these ripples, when viewed through Ellis's unique analytical lens, resolved into intricate, repeating geometric configurations. They were utterly alien in their complexity, defying any known human architectural or engineering principle, yet strangely familiar in their precise, almost crystalline regularity.
Each pattern was unique, yet shared a common underlying mathematical signature. Ellis's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum against the silence of her lab. She called them gravitational fingerprints, not fingerprints in the human, biological sense, but unique, complex patterns, almost like energetic signatures left behind by something vast and profoundly non-human that had touched, or perhaps shaped, the very fabric of reality itself. These were not the imprints of hands, but of something far grander, far more fundamental. The implications sent a profound shiver down her spine, a thrilling rush of discovery mixed with a deep, cosmic unease. If these were fingerprints, what kind of entity left such marks? And what message did they contain, embedded within the silent, eternal hum of gravity? The conventional explanations shattered around her like glass, revealing a dizzying, terrifying new vista of cosmic possibilities. This wasn't just an anomaly. It was a testament, a footprint from the unimaginable.
The revelation of the gravitational fingerprints wasn't just a scientific discovery for Ellis. It was an existential earthquake. The patterns were too complex, too integrated into the very fabric of local spacetime to be the byproduct of any known biological or mechanical civilization. Human engineering, no matter how advanced, left its mark through displacement, excavation, and material manipulation. These patterns were different. They were woven into the energy fields themselves, like a sculptor working not with clay, but with the very forces that bound reality together. Her initial hypothesis, whispered into the void of her lab, was audacious. The creators were not beings from the universe. They were the universe, or at least fundamental aspects of it. She theorized they weren't carbon-based or silicon-based life, but pure, coherent, gravitational energy. Or perhaps entities existing in dimensions beyond human comprehension, using gravity as their medium to interact with our three-dimensional reality. The pyramids, then, weren't just buildings. They were conduits, resonance chambers, or anchors, structures meticulously designed to attune to these cosmic vibrations, to act as a bridge for their non-corporeal forms, or to project their presence into our tangible world. This wasn't science fiction to Ellis. It was the logical conclusion of her data. If a being existed purely as a gravitational wave, its touch on spacetime would manifest exactly as these intricate, echoing ripples. If a higher dimensional entity brushed against our reality, the resulting distortion might appear to us as a complex, repeating signature, a shadow cast by a form we couldn't fully perceive. The very precision of the pyramids' alignment, their seemingly impossible construction, suddenly made terrifying sense. They weren't built by a civilization in the traditional sense. They were grown or manifested by entities that understood the universe on a level humans could only dream of. Ellis found herself spending endless hours in dusty libraries, poring over ancient texts, not for historical accounts, but for subtle clues in forgotten myths and astronomical charts. She sought any mention of sky gods who weren't depicted as humanoids, but as light, sound, or formless energy. She delved into obscure quantum gravity theories, seeking any academic footnote, any discarded equation that might hint at consciousness existing beyond the physical. Her research became a solitary obsession, pushing her further to the fringes of academic acceptance. Professor Finch's polite smiles had long since turned into concerned frowns. "Ellis," he'd pleaded during one of their increasingly rare conversations, "you're losing yourself in speculation. Data needs to be grounded in observable phenomena."
But for Ellis, the gravitational fingerprints were the observable phenomena, demanding a new, radical interpretation. The deeper she delved, the more convinced she became that the fingerprints were more than just remnants. They were signals, perhaps dormant instructions, a warning, or even an invitation. The repeating patterns hinted at a language, a complex mathematical dialect written in the language of gravity itself. If she could somehow replicate one of these signatures, consciously, deliberately, what would happen? Would it amplify the signal? Would it allow her to perceive the true nature of the creators? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Her mind fixated on a smaller, less studied pyramid nestled away from the main Giza complex. It was known for its unusually strong, though intermittent, gravitational anomalies. It was also less frequented by tourists and researchers, offering the solitude she needed for her audacious plan. She began secretly modifying a compact portable gravitational field modulator she'd been developing for unrelated research. This device, initially designed to subtly manipulate microgravity fields for advanced material science, now became her key to unlocking an ancient cosmic secret. She painstakingly re-engineered its core, pushing its limits to generate precise, powerful, and sustained gravitational fluctuations. The risks were immense. Manipulating gravity on this scale was uncharted territory. She could rip a hole in space-time, create a localized black hole, or simply fry herself and her equipment. But the call of the unknown, the tantalizing possibility of answering humanity's oldest questions about its place in the cosmos, outweighed any fear. She had to try. She had to touch the universe back, to see if the echoes of these ancient gravitational imprints could lead her to their source.
The night of the experiment was stark, silent, and unnervingly clear. A cool desert breeze whispered across the plateau, carrying grains of ancient sand that glittered like distant stars. Ellis had chosen a lesser-known, smaller pyramid, a satellite structure to the grander ones, tucked away from the prying eyes of tourists and the skepticism of her colleagues. Its entrance, a tight, low passage, swallowed the last rays of twilight as she dragged her carefully assembled equipment inside. The air within was thick and still, smelling of dust, antiquity, and something else, a faint, almost metallic tang that she now recognized as the subtle hum of the pyramid's inherent gravitational anomalies. Her custom-built gravitational field modulator, a sleek, complex array of shimmering conduits and humming capacitors, sat at the heart of the small chamber. It was connected by a thick, insulated cable to a ruggedized laptop, its screen a glowing nexus of her carefully crafted algorithms and real-time data streams. On the screen, a precise, complex 4D signature of one of the most prominent gravitational fingerprints pulsed, waiting to be brought to life. This was the pattern she intended to replicate, to project back into the very space that had spawned it. Ellis ran through her pre-flight checks, her hands steady despite the frantic pounding of her heart. Every calculation had been double-checked, every variable accounted for. Yet the sheer audacity of what she was attempting sent cold dread through her veins. She was trying to converse with the universe using its own fundamental language, not through symbols or sounds, but through the manipulation of a force that shaped galaxies. This wasn't just a scientific experiment. It felt like a sacred, forbidden ritual. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she initiated the sequence. A low hum emanated from the modulator, quickly building in intensity. The air in the chamber began to vibrate, a subtle tremor that resonated not through the floor, but through her very bones. The lights on her equipment flickered, then stabilized, glowing with an intense, otherworldly luminescence.
On the laptop screen, the pulsating 4D signature on the display began to throb with increasing energy, as if it were drawing power from an unseen source. Then, the world shifted. It wasn't a sound, nor a visual spectacle in the conventional sense. The air didn't explode, the stones didn't crumble. Instead, the very fabric of reality around Ellis seemed to ripple, to flex and warp like liquid light. The light from her laptop became distorted, stretching and contracting, as if viewed through a cosmic funhouse mirror. Her ears popped, not from pressure, but from a sudden, profound emptiness of sound, a vacuum that resonated only with the building hum of the modulator. She didn't see a creature or a ship or any physical form of the ancient creators. What she experienced was far more profound and utterly beyond human language. It was a direct perception of pure, coherent cosmic logic. Her mind was flooded not with images, but with an overwhelming sense of order, an intricate symphony of forces that composed the universe. She felt herself expanding, her consciousness momentarily detached from her physical form, soaring through abstract geometric constructs that shifted through impossible dimensions. She perceived stars not as distant points of light, but as nodes in an impossibly vast, living network woven together by unseen threads of gravity. Time itself became malleable, a dimension she could briefly navigate, seeing the past and future as merely different perspectives on a continuous, flowing present. It wasn't a conversation, but a direct download of fundamental reality. She understood with terrifying clarity that the creators were not individuals or civilizations in the human sense. They were the principles, the equations, the very intent behind the cosmos. They were the gravitational architects, beings of pure essence that had manifested parts of themselves or their understanding into our reality through structures like the pyramids. The fingerprints were never meant to be deciphered by crude tools or translated into human words. They were meant to be experienced, a gateway to a reality that dwarfed human comprehension. The experience was fleeting, lasting only a handful of seconds, but it was shattering. The intense mental pressure, the sheer volume of information, was too much for a human mind to bear. The shimmering distortion in the air vanished, the hum of the modulator dropped to a low thrum, and Ellis felt herself violently pulled back into her physical body, collapsing to the dusty floor. When she finally stirred, minutes or hours later, the chamber was silent again, save for the soft glow of her laptop. She pushed herself up, her limbs heavy, her head throbbing, but it wasn't just her body that was different. Her perception of reality was irrevocably altered. The world looked the same, but she felt it differently. The background hum of the universe was no longer just noise. It was rich with subtle patterns, the echoes of the fingerprints now discernible everywhere, in every ripple of light, every sway of a distant tree, every shift of the Earth's magnetic field. She now saw the true nature of the pyramids, not as buildings, but as crystallized moments of cosmic intent, left behind by beings who were the universe's fundamental laws. She understood their message not intellectually, but instinctively. And now Ellis Vance, the eccentric physicist, faced the ultimate burden. She knew a truth that could shatter humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the cosmos. But how could she explain a truth that transcended language, a truth experienced directly through the very fabric of existence? The choice was stark. Attempt to share this terrifying, magnificent burden and risk being dismissed as insane, or live with the crushing weight of a solitary, all-encompassing knowledge, forever aware that humanity was but a tiny ripple in a much grander gravitational ocean.